Well, we both have SEC roots. My guest today went to Auburn. She is a fervent Tiger fan. Half my family went to Ole Miss. So I'm not going to, needless to say, force my guest, Morgan Weinbrecht Thomas, to sing the Ole Miss fight song. I don't think I'm going to do that. We are going to have some fun, though, talking about her career. Studio director at Turner, where she works with the NHL. She works with the NBA and so many other properties. And we're going to tell her story of inspiration and how she got to where she is today, learn about her life, learn about her drive, learn about her passion. And I am Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. And this is the On to Something podcast. So Morgan, first of all, I appreciate you making the time. You got March Madness about to happen. And obviously your Tigers are in great position here. So I know you're anxious about that and being a part of the broadcast. But I wanted to start here. Knowing you went to Auburn, knowing how much you love the school, if I were to put together a contest to show who would be the most avid Auburn Tiger fan out there, what would you show me to prove to the nation that you truly are the most dedicated fan of Auburn?
Oh my. Well, Bryan, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I will talk about Auburn all day long. As far as being the biggest fan, behind me is one of the toilet paper rolls from the last time we rolled Toomer's trees before we had to unfortunately take them down because they died. I've got multiple Charles Barkleys here. He's in my office at home. We work together at work. I think the biggest thing about Auburn, though, is riding the ups and downs of the SEC, right? You've got the great giant that is Alabama. So anyone who can talk positively about Auburn year round for any sport at any time is by far the biggest fan. I mean, I can honestly say I never painted myself blue and orange for a game, and I kind of regret it. I kind of wish I had done that. Not so sure I should do it now at this point, going back to a game, but I definitely think that the Auburn spirit lives true in everyone that went there. I mean, we have Auburn stickers on our cars, and I will be in a parking lot in Florida and someone will walk by and say War Eagle. Like we're everywhere, and it is just so much fun because I'm like, oh, I want to be your friend, War Eagle, and I'm like, I have no idea who you are and you have no idea, and I probably came across way too excited to say War Eagle to you, but it's just the fabric that runs through anyone who went there.
So the first time you said War Eagle to Charles Barkley, what was his reaction?
So, funny story. When I started working there, I think he was probably the first person in every bit of television that I'd done that I was a little bit starstruck by. Like I grew up watching him. I grew up wanting to be, he's just so likable. Like you want to talk to him and he'll tell you all these crazy stories and he is just so genuinely nice. And so the first time that I got to meet him, I think I wore an Auburn shirt because it's like an icebreaker, right? Like I don't have to say anything to you, but now you're going to want to talk to me because I went to Auburn, right? Like it's like this automatic in. And he was just as nice as and as friendly as could be. And every time I see him, we're always talking Auburn. When I was really little, I grew up an Auburn fan. So when I was really little, the very first Auburn football game I ever went to, I think I was like 6 or 7 years old. And I actually have a picture of Charles and I from when I was that little. I have not gotten the nerve to bring it in, but I told him this story and it was just so cool to be like, wow, like you've touched people from so far and so wide, people that got to meet you for a second, people that got to, just say hello to you, take a picture with you, and just how kind you are and how you're always willing. Like you made this little kid's like dream meeting you when I was little, and now I work with you, and he's so humble and he's so nice and he's so easy to work with. And so it's just kind of surreal because people always ask me, they're like, oh my gosh, what's he like? And I'm like, exactly like you see on television. That's not an act. He is just genuinely that nice. And he wants to give shout outs. We're, every start of every day, hey Chuck, you got a shout out today? He's like, of course I've got a shout out. You just make sure you take my camera. Yep, of course, Chuck, we're always on you. So it's really awesome to be able to work with someone who is just that big in the sports world.
More on you being that 6 or 7-year-old who met Charles. And if you could look into the future, Morgan, and somebody could tell you, hey, one day you two would be working on set together, What do you think the reaction of that 6 to 7 year old version of yourself would be?
Um, Probably a little bit strange because I wanted to be a doctor. So
Ah,
my whole first I wanted to be a vet, and we've had so many animals, and then I didn't like the fact that they couldn't tell you what was wrong. So I was like, people, we're going to move over to people. I was big into science, I was big into math. So I probably would have been like, like I would have been very skeptical, like me working in television, like there's no way. But I knew nothing about television. And I actually went to Auburn pre-med, and I was halfway through pre-med when we partnered with the SEC network. It had just started, and they were like, hey, they want students to work on these broadcasts. We're going to train people, whether you've ever done television or not. And I completely fell in love with it and then switched my major.
what about it made you fall in love with it?
I think it was the emotion behind it, to be able to bring that emotion to people. Sports brings out the most excitement and sometimes, unfortunately, the biggest heartbreak to fans. And so to be able to watch those moments and know you created those moments and you allowed the viewer in to really feel like they were part of those moments, even if they weren't physically at the game, was just so much fun for me. Like I still get chills talking about it. To be part of the team that worked on the 2013 Iron Bowl and the Kick Six, to be part of March Madness, where every single game you are hanging on elation and you're hanging on heartbreak for people. And how do you bring that into people's homes and do those teams justice and tell those stories properly and really give people an insight to not being at the game? We enter people's homes on a weekly basis. And especially during COVID, we were one of the few things that people found joy in was watching sports. Whether you were a fan or not, it was a sense of escape. So to be able to bring that to people is just, it's so much fun on a daily basis.
You bring so much joy to so many people. Morgan Weinbrecht Thomas is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. And obviously, you feel the joy in seeing other people experience that joy that you've been a part of. For you, this whole journey of yours, what's the most rewarding part of it in what you're able to do?
I think it would be being able to give back. I consider myself extremely lucky to be in the position that I am in as a female, to be in the position that I'm in at all for anyone. I mean, to be able to say that I direct Inside the NBA. I mean, that's a show that's going to go down in television history. It's part of the Basketball Hall of Fame. There's no television shows part of Hall of Fame. Like, it is so rewarding to be able to say all of those things. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really bring you anything except a sense of accomplishment. So for me, my favorite project that I work on at Turner is The Match, and being able to bring that back during COVID and to be able to take a show that was meant purely for entertainment the first time with Tiger and Phil, to take it to go out to huge names and say, we want to raise money and we want the sole purpose of this to be about COVID relief and to be about helping people during this time. And we're going to put it on television as carefully as we can so that people also have something to watch. There were no sports at this time. Everything was completely shut down when we decided to do this. And so to be able to work on a project that is solely for other people is by far the most rewarding. And we took the fabric of that and we've continued it through the other matches. I mean, it's always going to have a different iteration, and who knows what the next one looks like. And we're going to keep working to keep them fresh, but we have kept the fabric of being able to put charity as a major importance of the broadcast. And to me, that is an outreach that you don't always, most of the time, I would say, people don't get to experience doing sports television.
Knowing that, Morgan, how do you want people to look at you as a source of inspiration? You pointed out how, in a way, you're lucky, but you're fortunate, and you're very skilled, and you're very talented. All of these things come together to how you've become where you are today. But how do you want those who look up to you to perceive you?
I really just want to be a source of information for people. I find so much joy out of hopping on my LinkedIn and having a student at a college reach out and say, will you look at my resume? Or do you have any advice? Or do you have 5 minutes to have a virtual coffee? Because that's what they have to be right now. And I think that I would love to be able to do that all the time. I would love to be able to talk to people. I love to hear other people's stories. I love to give them pieces of advice. I am really fortunate with the team and the bosses that I have at Turner that believe in me, that push me, that have brought me to where I'm at. But it's not always been blue skies and sunny days. And I feel like when I was coming through, I was very naive and I was very kind of trying to forge my own path and figure it out. And it took me a long time to really take a step back and realize that people are the most important part. I always tell everyone that I come in contact with, who you know is so much more important than what you know. And that's not who you know that's famous or who you know that's in charge of something. It's those relationships that you forge that make people want to root for you. They make people want to see you succeed. They want to bring you up with them. And if you can become someone that people want to root for, you're going to get the promotion. You're going to get the opportunity. It might not always be when you want it or when you think you're ready for it, but you're going to get it. And those people are really going to put a lot of time and effort into valuing you to make you part of the bigger picture and whatever that entertainment company is doing. And so I would like to be able to do that for other people. I'd really like to be able to talk to people and say like, hey, be careful of this. You know, like sometimes people really shy away from the negative, right? Nobody wants to talk about it. It's icky. The only time we hear about it is in the news. And it's once the damage has been beyond done to people that you hear about it. And sometimes I feel like if I had just been warned, right, it wouldn't have been negative. It wouldn't have been talking bad about someone. But if someone had given me a heads up, I feel like I could have tackled maybe a situation or a relationship differently. And there might have been a different outcome. And I feel like a lot of times that's not the advice that's given. We want to talk about all the positive things. We want to talk about all the good things. And I want to look at someone and be like, hey, you know, be careful of this, try this instead, and watch them succeed farther, faster, higher than I ever did. It would be so rewarding.
I think that canvas who you are and that you are looking out for others. And those obstacles that you faced have been learning lessons for you in that now when you supervise or advise or look at others, you can help them not go down a certain path. And that goes back to something that's at the core of you, and that is giving back in all you do. And along the lines of relationships, and you tapped into the power of relationships, how does your husband root for you?
It's really funny. So he's a really big hockey fan. So when we got hockey, he was like running around the house more ecstatic than I was. And I was like, I'm out of my league here. I know what I know about hockey from you. Like you took me to hockey games. You've taught me hockey. So but he was so ecstatic. And it's funny because he's always been so supportive. Like when I started my career and moved to Turner, I was on the game side. I was traveling 5 days out of the week for 9 months out of the year, and sometimes longer. We'd be gone for 2.5 weeks for conference finals. Sometimes we'd be gone a month. I did live in the bubble. That was an experience. So he has never stopped me from ever doing that. Does it make it hard? Yeah, it's hard to be away from home, but he has always supported me in that sense. I'd like to say he watches all of my broadcasts as well. But to be honest, he would watch Stanley Cup finals when Inside was out for conference finals. Sometimes I'd be like, you can record the hockey, like watch the show that I'm doing. And he's like, but hockey's on. So now it's really great because every night he's texting me. He's like, oh, this was so funny, or this looks so great, or I really like how you guys do this. And I'm like, thanks for tuning into the broadcast now. I really appreciate that. But he has never once stepped on me to say, hey, don't do that, or hey, don't go there, or he has been so supportive in anything and everything that I do.
He's very empowering to you, and you guys make a good team. You mentioned how you were in the bubble, and obviously your schedule was revolving around these broadcasts in the NBA, but when you did have some off time in the bubble, how would you spend that off time?
There wasn't really much that you could do. And so I chose to have as little off time as possible. I think the big one was catching up on sleep. We were rotating in a way that sometimes we would be like one team would do 2 or 3 games in a day. So a lot like March Madness, but there were only so many people down there. So, and we were all in one place. You didn't have to move the production trucks. You didn't have to move anything. So it's like, well, if the team's on site, like they can do 2 or 3 games in a day. And it helped a little bit. But the repetition of it was really hard. I tell people, everyone asks, oh, what was it like? And it's really hard to explain. I'm like, have you ever seen The Truman Show, the movie? It's
Yeah.
not like that. Like I passed the same people in the same hallways at the same times, day in and day out. And then it would get to the point where we would get our laundry picked up and you would also see them in the same clothes. So it was so repetitive that it was, and we were not supposed to, even in the bubble, we weren't really supposed to be around each other. We couldn't go to the gym. So one of my favorite things is we would all wake up at like 5 or 6 in the morning, because of course, August in Florida, like you don't want to be outside. So we'd all wake up at like 5 or 6 in the morning and we would socially distance walk the golf course that was on the property. And we would just change directions. I mean, that's all you could really do each day. And we would all get up and it was kind of a nice way to like check in on people and not see them in just the work setting. And then you'd go and hang out by the pool and you would eat the same lunch by the pool. So it was a lot of kind of doing the same thing over and over again. I think we were lucky that, you know, we weren't in a cold city in the middle of a cold time of year. I think the outside time was really, really positive on people's mental health, but it was a lot of repetition, even on off days.
How proud are you in the way in which that whole thing was executed? You knew how many eyeballs were on you guys, the pressure to get the NBA back. And when you think about, and there's so many more accomplishments in your future, but as far as on the hierarchy of achievements so far, being a part of that, seeing that through, where does that stack up for you in your career so far?
It's pretty high. I think I'm more in awe of the people that I was around. To think about, you know, we've never worked jointly with ESPN, and we were all put in the same hotel in the same production trucks and said, figure it out and work together and put your style of broadcast on the air, but you're going to have to do it by completely using each other's resources. And we had members of our team, that set up single people that set up the entire network of how we transferred footage, the entire network of how you access stuff in real time that other productions were doing, so that we all had all of the information, because we might have the Mavericks one day and ESPN might have them right the next day. So we had to be able to share all of that in real time and be able to communicate without having to track anything down. And so the single people that were down there that were handling all of our COVID protocol, that were handling all of the technical aspects of it, I'm just in awe of them. I felt like I was a very small piece of a puzzle that was only put on and only possible by some really amazing individuals.
There are a lot of amazing individuals that work on March Madness, you being one of them. As we tape this in early March 2022, we are getting ready for the madness that is March Madness. And your role in that, for people to understand what you do, the probably lack of sleep that you get, what is it like from your vantage point?
I think I'm one of the few people that gets really excited about it, but to run on adrenaline is an understatement. So we have like a teaser. It's like a fake little taste of March Madness when we do 2 nights of the first 4, right? It's like a normal night for us. Well, Thursday and Friday, you have 64 teams that are competing. So we show up at work sometime around 8 a.m. on Thursday morning. And I tell people we really don't leave until like Sunday night. Turner actually puts us up in a hotel so that we can get about 4-ish hours of sleep, and we don't have to go anywhere. Like we can just walk out, go to the hotel, get as much sleep and a shower as you can before you've got to be right back the next day. So it is, you know, last year it was Saturday and I was just dragging. I was like, I can't think straight. I don't even remember what games we've seen. And I went to make copies and I put my phone in the copier and broke copier outside of the control room. And it's just one of those where like IT comes down and they're like, it's March Madness. Just here's your phone. Just go take a minute, go step outside, drink a cup of coffee. Like just, we're all very supportive of each other, but you know, everyone is super heightened, super excited, super ready to put on these broadcasts and have fun. And yet they're also about 5 minutes away of crying at the same time because we're so tired. But it's just a race. We're like 4 days. If we can get through the first 4 days, you've made it. You have made it through March Madness if you can get through the first 4 days.
And your Auburn Tigers, you're hoping they make it through the first 4 days. And if there's ever a season for that to happen, it is this. And I want to leave you with this final question, Morgan. How much are you going to be keeping an eye on what Bruce Pearl is doing and the Tigers as you're manning and working on all these different games that are happening in conjunction with one another? How much time are you going to try to see what those Tigers are doing and keep an eye on them?
Probably 100% of the time. I have all the notifications set up on my phone. I have, so from a Turner perspective, we'll handle everything that hits TNT, TBS, and True TV. And then there's a studio in New York that will handle everything that hits CBS. So we take the brunt of the content and the games. Every now and then Auburn will end up on CBS. And I work with a really great technical team, and there is always a feed on the wall. There is always a way that I can check in on them. The last year that they were just streaking through March Madness, we're coming on the air and I'm sitting there and I'm like, please just let the game end before we come on the air. Let the game end before we come on the air. Like I need to focus on my job, and I'm going to focus on my job, but I need to know that they've made it. And that was the year they beat Kansas. Like they were running through these blue blood schools. And I was like, I just need the game to end before we come on the air. And this was prior to COVID, and we made it past Sweet 16. And I like jumped up in the control room. I was so excited. I was like, this is amazing. And then I sat back down, I collected myself, and we're back to work. And my boss just looks at me and he kind of goes, and there was all of our executives had brought in a tour of, I don't know, and they were like, you're an Auburn fan. They were clapping. They were like, congratulations. And I was like, I could have gone one of two ways. I'm really glad it went that way.
Yes.
Would have been nice to be warned first, but it's just moment. I mean, everyone appreciates it, whether it's your school or not. Everyone just gets so into it, and they get so excited for people to be excited for their schools.
Yeah. And the adrenaline has to be pacing through, and to be good at your job, multitasking has to be something that you're good at, and being able to keep track of your team while also keeping track of all the games. That shows you how great you are at what you do. And Morgan, you had said one of your mottos is every time someone tunes into one of your shows, that they should be able to learn something, to show them something that they have never seen before. And I hope that in this conversation, people who think they know you, they learned something new about you. That was the goal, and I think we achieved that. Morgan Weinbrecht Thomas, studio director at Turner, TNT, March Madness, NBA, the list goes on. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. Morgan, thank you so much for the insights, the conversation, and just the spirited chat. Really enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you so much, Bryan, and War Eagle.